Hello and welcome to my channel. It's Monica from Crafting with Quilling Lady, and I hope you have an absolutely fabulous day. I decided to make some projects for crafters and artists, and if you like any of my projects, please watch this video, give it a thumbs up and feel inspired. I had a look at my stash and I found this beautiful Crafty Fun Collection by Crafter's Companion, and it is perfect for any projects that you want to give to people who are interested in handmade projects. For my first card, I used this design paper, which is 250 GSM, and it has that beautiful vintage look and patterns. I also use this cute as a button cut and emboss folder, and what's really unique about this, it cuts out the inside, but it embosses the buttons outside. Please check the manual for your cutting machine before you use cut and emboss folders. And I've got this inside shape for my other projects. I decided to give the buttons which are embossed a little bit of dimension because they are pretty lost on the pattern paper. So for this one you can use any distress oxide or any ink you've got, and just blending tool just to give the embossed elements a little bit pop, and actually that worked pretty well. For this project I decided to use a vintage look, so like browns, pinks, purples, and now I'm going to emboss this beautiful Crafty Notions, and I'm going to use Distress Oxide to give it a little bit more color because again it is a little bit lost on the pattern paper. Whenever you emboss on a pattern paper, I really encourage you to add a little bit of color on top. It really makes a difference. Then I decided to fussy cut the embossed image because I thought it would be even more interesting to put it on a card. And I didn't want to go with just horizontal or vertical line. I decided to put that one on a diagonal line, and I really like this effect. Okay, so when you use any pattern papers, try to use some other inks just to give it more dimension and more interest. And as you can see, I'm moving the paper with my left hand and I'm cutting with my right hand. Now it's time to die cut some elements and stamp the elements as well. This time for stamping, I'm going to use Distress Oxides. Yes, you can stamp with them and you can actually achieve really beautiful effects. So as you can see, I'm using the Distress Oxide to stamp my elements, and then I'm going to use just wet paintbrush to spread the color on the paper. You can use watercolor paper, and here I just use regular stamping card and it worked perfectly. When you create any vintage look projects, I really encourage you to go with the limited color palette because it really makes a difference. As you can see, it is really easy to move the color around on a card with just wet paintbrush. And actually I had to dry the paintbrush in between, and because the color was spreading too much. Now I'm going to die cut the sewing machine and embroidery scissors, and we've got nearly all the elements for our project. It's time to stamp the sentiment, and I use this beautiful brown color on a pattern card. However, I didn't like how it stamped for the first time, so I stamped the sentiment again, and I was more pleased with the result. Now I'm going to fussy cut around the sentiment, and I'm going to use this small tool just to give the edges more interest. You can also use scissors as well to give it that vintage look. That is absolutely fine. I really like how it turned out, and I really encourage you to use either scissors or these small tools because that really gives more interest to the card. Now I decided to give that beautiful pink on the sides because it goes really well with the thread we created earlier, and then I decided to add the same pink color on the outside of the buttons, and that way all our elements match beautifully, and it really makes a big difference to our project. Whenever you use ink blending technique, I really encourage you to clean the surface straight away. I'm attaching double-sided foam adhesive because I really wanted that button frame to stand out and give it a little bit more dimension, and it actually looks pretty well in real life. It doesn't really show on the camera, but in real life it's really nice. Now I've got my base card, which is 5 by 7 inches, and I use double-sided tape on the back of my background panel, and as you can see, I'm using my pokey tool to peel off the tape, and then I'm using liquid glue just to attach it on a card because I really want to make sure that it stuck properly. I'm peeling off the double-sided tape, and a small tip from me: it's much better if you use pokey tool instead of your fingers. That's what I found out during my crafting life, and it really works amazingly. Okay, and again I'm putting liquid glue on the back because I really want everything to be nice, stuck properly, and it won't go apart. And then you can play with all your elements, you can adjust them the way you want, you can play with the layout, the design, the choice is absolutely yours. Here I thought that this beautiful element doesn't really stand out the way I wanted, so I decided to add a little bit more purple, and this way it really made a difference. If you want to attach the element in the middle, you can also use double-sided tape in the middle of your element. And I really want to know if you like vintage projects. Have you ever made any vintage look projects? I would really like to see them. If you have made any of them, please leave the link to your beautiful creation in the comment section. I'm really interested what you've been making. Here I was just playing with all the elements and how to put them on a card, and I'm using just my liquid glue to put them on a card. And then for the sentiment I also use double-sided tape, and I use liquid glue just on the sides here, and it worked perfectly. Now we just have to add these embroidery scissors, and we're done with the first project. However, a small thing to add: gold gems. Obviously it wouldn't be me if I didn't add small gold gems. You know how much I love them, and they really work well with gold mirror card. Do you like this project? Have you ever made a project with a sewing machine or embroidery scissors? I would really like to know. For my second card, I thought I really want some color now, so I took all the distress oxides I had in rainbow colors, and I'm using ink blending technique to give my background really beautiful color. And as you can see, I'm cleaning my glass mat straight away because I didn't want the colors to bleed on the mat. And when you use ink blending technique, you can always go back and forward with the colors just to make sure that the blending is smooth and nice. The camera doesn't really catch the difference between the green and blue, but in real life you can see the difference, and it looks really nice. Now it's time to stamp some splashes, and these ones come from Accents and Frames from the same Crafty Fun Collection. And I'm just using the same oxide inks just to put these stamps on the background. And I will have the name of this collection in the description down below, and I will also put the names of all the embossing folders, stamps and cutting dies as well, so you can check them out. I really encourage you to have a look at your stash and just take something, choose a color palette and go for it. Experiment, feel inspired, just create. Okay, now we're nearly done with the splashes, and they really stand out on the inked background. They look really nice. Now I decided to stamp these beautiful paintbrushes, and I use waterproof ink because I'm going to use aqua marker from Spectrum Noir to paint the paintbrush. So as you can see, I'm just adding the color a little bit on the paintbrush, and then I'm going to use wet paintbrush to paint this paintbrush. I can't even imagine how many times I've said paintbrush in this video, but it works. And then I really like to fussy cut these small elements. This one is just so easy to cut out with your scissors, and I really encourage you, like if you watch a film or if you just have some free time, just use your scissors and cut them out. I know this stamp comes with the cutting die, but I thought, why not? I really like fussy cutting, so I fussy cut quite a lot of paintbrushes for this card. It was actually pretty quick to do it. So I created paintbrushes with different colors on the tip, and then I'm using liquid glue and I'm going to attach all those paintbrushes on my background. And that's how it looks now. I really like the colors and dimension and these diagonal lines. So pretty. I created 4 strips of paper and they are 1.5 centimeter width, and I'm applying this brown distress oxide just to give it like a wooden effect look. So I'm actually pressing really hard with my ink blending tool, and it worked pretty well, and that will create a frame for our background. My idea for this card was to create a canvas with a wooden frame. And now I'm putting these 2 stripes together, and I'm going to use scissors to cut, let's say, roughly 45 degrees. I was just eyeballing it, so it's not really perfect, but you can take your time and make sure that it's 45 degrees. I just wanted to make the frame slightly smaller than a card base, but slightly bigger than the background panel. And now I'm going to use double-sided foam adhesive for the frame and double-sided tape for the background. So as you can see, my background is slightly smaller than the card base, and it worked pretty well. I really encourage you to measure your card base before you start a card. That makes a big difference. Okay, so now our panel is attached, and now I'm going to use double-sided tape, but we can also add more interest and texture to our frame. I'm actually using the Distress Oxide, exactly the same I used before, just to give the edges more darker look, and it worked pretty well. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but in real life it looks really beautiful. Have you ever made a card for a painter or crafter? These cards can be quite challenging because we know how to create cards and the other people know it as well. So we want to impress them. So my question is, have you ever made a card for a crafter? And how did you feel creating a card for that person? Because I really love creating something absolutely unique and special. And I think this is the best thing we can do for other people. So if you have ever made a card for a crafter or painter, please leave the link down below with your creation. Here, as you can see, I die cut the artist's palette, and I also put these small colorful dots, and I'm just attaching it on my card, and I was just playing with the design. I wasn't really sure where to put it first, and then I decided the best way to put it on my card would be left bottom corner. And again, I'm using double-sided foam adhesive and liquid glue, and then I also die cut and fussy cut the paintbrush. And it is really beautiful in this collection that you've got a variety of different products like artist palettes, sewing machine, embroidery scissors, splashes, rulers, markers, literally everything you need to make cards for crafters and artists. If you have this collection, I would really like to see your creations. Now it's time to stamp the sentiment, and I chose this archival ink in brown because it goes really well with the wooden frame we created. And then I decided to add a little bit more interest as well, so I fussy cut it, but I didn't use the straight lines. And that's our second card done. Now let's have a look at the third card. I use these hearts from Tonic Studio because these are the only heart dies I've got. I've got white card and I'm going to fold it in half, and that will give me the card base for my easel card. I also use this design paper, and I'm going to die cut the bigger heart as well, and that will give me the front panel. For this one I'm going to create a frame which will be our shaker element later on. Now I'm going to stamp the buttons from the same Crafty Fun collection. I'm going to fussy cut them because I really like fussy cutting, and I'm going to use Distress Oxide just to give a little bit more interest on the outside of the buttons, and that worked absolutely perfectly. I stamped and fussy cut quite a few of those beautiful buttons. And now, as you can see, I also attached the acetate on the frame heart, and I use double-sided foam adhesive just to make sure it is well prepared for our shaker card. Now I'm going to attach it on my front panel. As you can see, the buttons are inside, and it is a really beautiful and unique shaker card with paper buttons inside. I also decided to add a little bit more interest, so I'm applying this Distress Oxide on the outside of the heart. And now it's time to stamp the sentiment. And also I decided to stamp these spools of thread with the same Distress Oxide. And again, I'm using wet paintbrush to spread the color around. I really encourage you to have a look at your Distress Oxides inks, or if you just have Distress inks, and use them as paint. Seriously, that works amazingly and you can get such a beautiful result. And again, I'm going to fussy cut these elements because I really like to do it. Now it's time to die cut the embroidery scissors with gold mirror card, and I thought the top right corner, I'm not sure if you can say top right corner on a heart, but that's where I put the scissors. And now I'm fussy cutting those small elements, and I'm going to attach them using liquid glue. Super easy, simple and quick. And this card was actually the quickest from all those three. And my color palette, as you can see, is super limited, and it worked perfectly because I really achieved this vintage look. I'm attaching the blue as well, just to give it more dimension or an interest. Now it's time to stamp the sentiment, and I think it's such a great idea to use happy crafting instead of happy birthday for a crafter. Not only it looks a little bit different, but it's more interesting as well. So I use the stamps which are called Accents and Frame, and also the stamps called Happiness is Handmade. That's where the sentiment comes from, and I think naming the stamp set Happiness is Handmade is absolutely amazing. I'm adding a little bit of color on the sides as well, just to give it more dimension, and our card is nearly done. So with the card base we created earlier, now we have to score our front panel just to attach the shaker element we created. And with a scoring board is so quick and easy. And now we just have to burnish it and attach our beautiful shaker element using liquid glue. We also need a stopper for our shaker card, and I use the same element that's on the front of the card, which is the spool, and I use double-sided foam adhesive. And it worked perfectly, and our third project is done. Super quick, easy, and beautiful with this vintage look. I really would like to know which card is your favorite. Which one would you like to try? Would you like to go with the vintage look or more colorful look for a painter? Please let me know in the comments down below. Now you can have a look at all 3 cards, and I really want to know which one is your favorite. I hope you really enjoyed this video. You can also watch 2 other videos, which you can see here on the left and on the right. I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up. Have a fantastic day and happy crafting. Bye!